Sound check. Sound check. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way Yorkville. Happy Monday, guys. I know I'm going a little bit early, as I usually do. I prefer to be early than late, just so I can get home and see my family before they go to bed. So, if you're joining us live right now for our live question and answer, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure that you say hello. Let me also know where you're watching from as well. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that I got during the week from patients and also on social media. And then, if we have some time and if you do feel so inclined, we'll see if there's some time for some questions at the end. I'll do my best to answer those right now. So, if you're watching me, say hello. Let me know also where you're watching from. Thank you guys so much. A lot of people ask me, "Hey, did you watch the Super Bowl?" I'm like, "Actually, I did. It was the first football game that I watched all year, only because I did that just to spend a little bit extra time with my family." But I will tell you this: I have no skin in the game as far as who wins. I couldn't care less. So, question and answer. Let's do that live. Before we get into what I'm going to go over, because I'm going to go over some things about should I be on the carnivore diet? Do I need to count my calories? What are your first steps with mold? I'm going to answer those questions um, pretty much in detail. But before we do that, guys, if you are from the Chicagoland area and you want to work with us directly, or you're having any kind of health challenges or things like that, please make sure that you get registered for the inflammation event that's coming up Tuesday, February 25th, 6:00 p.m. This is an in-person event. Yes, this is at our office. And so just in the last day, I've had a lot of people coming in and they have a lot of problems with the ability to be able to lose weight. They have a lot of issues when it comes to blood sugar control, hormone issues, things like that, problems with the skin. And if you have any of those issues, which first and foremost, the first thing that you have to address the inflammatory triggers most importantly. So if you want to work with us directly, just go ahead and get registered for that event coming up Tuesday, February 25th. This is your ticket to work with us in the office, because once you understand the role of inflammation, you'll understand where we need to head, especially. So it's very easy, guys, to get registered for that. If you just click on our Linktree profile, it's on all our social media. You will see that this one comes up first. So you just go ahead and you click on the inflammation event. That'll take you to Eventbrite, take you about 60 seconds to register for that. And then a member of my staff will reach out to you in the near future just to confirm your attendance at that event. So if you're watching that and you want to work with us, you're from the Chicagoland area. Right now, currently, we are only working with people in person, just because our remote consult schedule is pretty full, and so work with me in person. So make sure you get registered for that event. It will be well worth your time and well worth your effort. I can promise you that. Okay. Now, if you're also watching, I want to make sure I reiterate. If you go to our link tree, I have some free downloads, and yes, they are gifts. Okay, so it doesn't require you to enter an email address or anything like that. So on Linktree, you're gonna see there's a couple of gifts for you, and I always do that just to say thank you for following us. I sincerely appreciate it, and for watching our live broadcast, I sincerely appreciate that as well. But if you go to Linktree, you'll be able to download a home workout book, and this has over 75 workouts. And guys, even if you were doing this 3 to 4 times a week, you probably would go through that workout book and do each workout 2 to 3 times a year, which is very, very diverse. And so if you go there and you go on our Linktree profile, you'll be able to download the home workouts. Here's my favorite one right here is an AMRAP, as many rounds and reps as possible in 11 minutes of 11 burpees and 22 air squats. So you want to see if you can do it, and then you go back, and you start training, go back and see if you can actually beat that score, because work capacity will increase when you're doing this specific type of exercise. So make sure that you download that. That's just a gift from me to you. So thank you very much for those follows. And then in addition to that, if you go to our link tree, guys, you will see our t-shirt store that we have. And so you'll see that you can order a t-shirt. If you're from the continental United States, you can order a t-shirt, whatever one you want and your size. And yes, we also have women's sizes as well. But one of the reasons why we have that is a lot of people don't know is running a live broadcast every single week costs our office thousands of dollars every single year. A lot of people don't realize that with software and things like that. So I always appreciate when people support our cause and they watch the live broadcast, they gain value from it. So you can go ahead and you can order a t-shirt. And yes, that's one of the ways that you can actually support our cause directly, is get an awesome t-shirt. Every time I go out in public and wear this, people give me a fist bump and they're like, yeah, nobody cares. Just keep working harder. That's one of the things that I live my life is like, it doesn't matter how hard you think it is that at the end of the day, not a lot of people care, and just keep putting your head down and start grinding. I tell my kids this a lot, and I say, you'll go far in life if you just keep working hard and you just don't give up, because a lot of people just give up and they lose because they give up. They don't lose because they fail. They lose because they give up. So there's a lot of other awesome t-shirts, like the Mandate Burpee t-shirt, that you can get as well. And people go out and they're seeing it. They're like, is that Dr. Thompson's t-shirt? And they're like, yeah. They're like, oh, I listened to him on his lives every single week. So make sure that you support our work. If you do that, I sincerely appreciate it. And you can order a t-shirt on demand. It'll be shipped to you probably within about 2 weeks. And you can get your specific t-shirt, color, size. It's really, really great. So question and answer live, guys. Let's go over a couple of things that were asked to me. And the thing is I know that if a patient asks me this, then it's probably going through a lot of the people who follow us. It's going through their brain as well. So Dr. Nate, what are your first steps with mold mycotoxicity? Right. And you guys will probably notice that I tend to avoid this topic a little bit because it does go down kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole. However, there's a lot of people who reach out like, oh my gosh, I have mold in my house. What do I need to do? Well, let it be on the record. Here's the first thing you need to do. If there's any kind of mold mycotoxicity, the first thing to know if you have it or not is that you're actually testing for it. Okay. That's the first thing, is that you have to have the presence of it in the body. The reasons why mold can be so damaging is because it's just a constant, never-ending immune system trigger. So what are my first steps? Like, what do you need to do, or where do you need to start when it comes to mold? So here is a mold test from an individual who came in and was suffering with terrible fatigue, very low energy, constant dizziness, had a lot of anemia markers that were going on, chronic irritation of the sinuses, low immune system, skin issues, very, very low hormones. And this individual was on 32 supplements. Just so you know, I didn't put him on 32 supplements. He just thought, oh, this one might be a good idea. I guess I'll go on it. The problem was that he was thinking very linearly and not looking at the whole picture. So one of the things that kind of flagged me is say, hey, you probably should test for mold, was because other people in the family were having a lot of the same issues. And when you think about it, if you have the same issues and you're sharing the same environment or the air that you are breathing in, there could be a common denominator behind that. So we did an actual mold mycotoxin test, and you can see very high in aflatoxin, ochratoxin, and then mycophenolic acid, which is actually not necessarily a mold, but it can actually show recent exposure. So if you look at this, he's in an active mold situation, and it's causing all kinds of issues, especially when it comes to the immune system. So how do you know if you have mold or not? There's no blood test that's going to just say, oh, yeah, there's mold that's going on, unless you're specifically testing for it within the urine. So you can see very, very high levels of mold, which can make a person feel very hazy, crazy, and very lazy, because energy and fatigue is a very, very common thing when it comes to mold as well. So What are your first steps when it comes to mold? Well, the first thing that I would say is where on earth is the mold coming from? So this is one of the first things that I say, because are there a lot of things that you can do in order to help um, get the body, rid of some of the mold? Yes, there is. But the first thing you want to do is bail out the boat, or plug the holes before you start bailing out the boat. And that's one of the things that, I told him. I says, before you start doing a bunch of things to bail out the boat, just make sure that you are plugging the holes. So you got to ask the question, where on earth is the mold coming from, and get out of the environment. Once you know that you're out of the environment, then you can start getting rid of some of the mold, especially. Now, I will tell you this, where's the mold coming from? Well, we're talking about the indoor environment. And so many times it can be coming from your house. Yes, I actually have seen it come from a person's work environment as well, but that gets really dicey, because nobody that's in charge of where people are working from actually wants to answer the tough questions. Well, maybe I have an issue with mold as well. So you have to make sure that you get out of the environment. That's why I always say, don't bail out a boat until you first plug the holes. This is why this is so important, because you don't want to be just trying to bail out a boat and then you still are getting exposure over and over again. What you really, really want to do is you want to make sure I'm not getting any exposure, and then start helping the body be able to get rid of it. Okay. So here's some of the things, and there's really no protocol when it comes to mold, but I would say this: you got to find it, you got to dilute it, and then work on protecting yourself. So find the mold, dilute the mold, and then start working on protecting yourself. This is why one of the tests that we use, we have nothing to do with this. In fact, we just tell people to go to a website. It's called the dust test. The reason why is because mold is carried on dust. And now, don't get some kind of air quality test or a Tate test or something like that that just blows around the dust. Go ahead and actually take dust samples from where you think the mold is, and that will actually tell you the level of mold that's actually can be in your environment. So this is why, if you go to the dust test, the dusttest.com, you actually order that, they'll ship it to you. You do a dust test, and then it'll tell you what the type of mycotoxins that might be present. We're talking about not environmental mold. We're talking about water damage mold. So coming from any kind of leaks, house leaks, plumbing leaks, roof leaks, attic leaks, high humidity in the house. First and foremost, you got to see what you're dealing with, first and foremost. If that comes back positive, then the next thing that I would say is you got to find where the source is actually coming from, and you got to make sure that you fix it. But the other thing too is yes, you can start diluting the air, and that's why a triad air, and you can see that on our Linktree profile. But actually starting to dilute the air, because the solution to pollution is dilution. That's why I'll ask people, hey, is mercury toxic? And they're like, yeah, it is. I said, well, what if I put 1 drop of mercury in your body? Yeah, it can be very toxic. But if I put 1 drop of mercury in the ocean, well, then it's not going to become as toxic, because it's going to undergo a massive dilution process. And one of the things that triad air can do is that it can start to make a lot of the dust start to fall out of where you're breathing it in, and have it start to fall down. So the thing is that you'll be breathing in cleaner air. And also, if you're in an active environment in which you know that there is in fact mold, then I would tell you, before you start working on binding it and getting rid of it, and trying to support the body during that, start putting some colloidal silver in your nasal passages. And that's what I'll tell people to do, is just start putting some silver, and start to breathe it in, because the silver can actually kill off or to sterilize the nasal passages, which is where you are in fact getting the mold. So it's one of the things that can kill off any active mycotoxins within the sinus cavities, especially. So just start working on protecting yourself. And yes, you also can start on some binders. The problem is that binders are very specific to certain types of mycotoxins. Yes, and it might be certain types of charcoals or clay, or zeolites, or yes, or even some forms of probiotics can be very beneficial, but that's very specific to the type of mold that you are actually testing for as well. So the only thing that binders do is that they just, as the body starts to metabolize it through the liver, gallbladder, and then into the gastrointestinal system, it just binds it up so that it doesn't cause as much collateral damage as it passes through the gastrointestinal system. But you got to test for it. You got to see what's in your body, because there's certain binders that will work better than certain others. And it's very specific to the type of mold toxicity that you are carrying. Okay. So first steps is you got to make sure that you're tested. If you test positive in the body, you got to make sure that you're not in the environment, and then try to figure out where on earth is this coming from, and then start cleaning the air, and then start doing some things in order to start binding the mold and making sure that you're getting yourself in a pretty sterile environment, that you're not continually breathing it in as well. Okay. All right. I'm going to be taking a couple of questions here in just a second. But Dr. Nate, what are your thoughts on the carnivore diet? Now, I know that people will come to me, and they're like, I'm on the carnivore diet because I have a lot of gastrointestinal issues. And one of the reasons why people clinically can start to notice a change and start to notice an improvement is because the carnivore diet is one of the most, you know, ultimate elimination diets, which if you decided that you were just going to eat animal meat or animal products and that was it, well, you probably would um, start to eliminate a lot of the things that your gastrointestinal system doesn't like. So, have I put people on a carnivore diet? The answer is yes. Have I kept them there? The answer is no. So, the carnivore diet is something that if I put somebody on, I'm usually looking at a food allergy test, and I'm also looking at some kind of stool sample just to see if that's something that would be beneficial for them short term. But I definitely don't keep them on it long term, only because one of the things that's missing out of the carnivore diet is high amounts of fiber. Okay. Don't tell me that you don't need fiber. You do need fiber. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you an example, and this is why testing can be so important. And so some people say, "Oh, I decided to go on a carnivore diet." I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, that's because, somebody told me that I should go on it." And if you get good clinical results, I'm like, "Congratulations. You are a blind squirrel and you happen to find a nut." Okay? And this is, guys, why testing is so important, because here's someone's food allergy test looking for the presence of IgG food allergies, which is an immune system response. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not an allergy. They just don't like that it's not an anaphylactic response. But if you look at this person, and one of the things that you notice, if they decided, hey, I'm going to go all carnivore, and they started eating a lot of muscle meat, animal meat, things like that. Well, if they eat chicken breast, they're going to have a really bad day. If they have any dairy, they're going to have a really bad day. If they have any eggs, they're going to have a really bad day. If they have any kind of other fowl like turkey, they're going to have a really, really bad day. And some of the things they may be getting rid of, they may notice a little bit of improvement. But if they keep eating turkey and chicken and some dairy, and eggs and things like that, it's going to be very difficult for this person to be able to have a full recovery, because they're always causing different kinds of inflammatory triggers and things like that. So this is why I think testing is actually important. Testing is very, very important. And yes, I have told people, and this is looking at their blood sugars and looking at this, hey, you should go on more of a carnivore type diet, especially. But I want to see that you start to get better. And then when we retest that, then we can start introducing other foods, especially. Testing can be very, very important. But one of the things I always make sure that we're putting them on is higher amounts of fiber, because I know that if they're on a carnivore type diet, they're just not going to get the amount of fiber that they need, especially to help them long term as well. Okay. So, and this is why I'm not trying to demonize the carnivore diet, but you will see that different types of diet gain popularity and then they go away, like the ketogenic diet, the paleo diet, which I believe is actually probably one of the best ways in order to eat. But it goes through a fad, and then people like bright shiny object syndrome, they go on to the next one in order to try to heal their gut or something like that. And there's a lot more that's going to be needed as far as helping with the gastrointestinal system. This is why testing can be so important. Dr. Nate, what are your thoughts on fasting? Okay. What are your thoughts on fasting? Is there anything magical about fasting? Well, I will tell you this. This is coming from someone who I've done a 6-day fast of just water only. I've done a 5-day fast of water only. And in fact, at one point, I fasted for 3 days for 6 consecutive weeks. So I know what it's like to not eat food for an extended amount of time. But one of the things I will tell you is, what are your thoughts on fasting? Because I don't think everyone is necessarily going to be a great candidate to fast. Okay. And let me go a little bit deeper in regards to this. If you're a woman, you're having a menstrual cycle, I would say no. In fact, I have had some women, who were cycling, and I have had them fast, where that was just because they had an active ulcer. So cycling women typically no. And one of the reasons why is that you'll notice is that when you abstain for food for a long period of time, you're going to have a lot of cortisol coursing through your veins because the body is constantly trying to mobilize sugar, trying to mobilize sugar. And this is why one of the things that I notice with fasting is that usually after the first day was fine. After day two, always had a little bit of problem sleeping. And that was because I had very high levels of cortisol, just because try to mobilize my blood sugars as much as possible. So men, I would actually say generally yes. Okay, now I can't give you a very specific, without looking at your labs or anything like that. But men generally can. But I'm going to show you who shouldn't like fast because they're going to have a really tough day with it. So who shouldn't really fast is do not fast if you have chronically low cortisol. And this is actually a hormone secreted by the adrenal glands. What's the purpose of cortisol? To mobilize blood sugars. And it's a stress hormone, especially. Reason why I say that is because there are people who come in and they're like, gosh, I don't know why I can't lose weight. I don't know why I can't lose weight. And they have very poor adrenal function. You actually want to see, well, what's causing poor adrenal function? And usually there's some kind of massive inflammatory trigger that they're just not aware of, i.e. like mold or something like that. And I remember I had a woman who came to me, had terrible adrenal function. I mean, we actually on a Dutch test, we saw her adrenal glands and they were just like basically flatline. So the adrenal glands just weren't kicking out much cortisol. Instead, they were kicking out a lot more cortisone. And that has to do with inflammation and things like that. And she said, should I do a 5-day fast? And I looked at her cortisol levels. I'm like, absolutely not. You're going to have a really bad day if you decide to do that. And I tried to talk her out of it. And she said, I'm going to do it anyway. I said, okay, let me know how that goes. And so she did a 5-day fast. And then she finished up. I said, how'd you feel? She's like, well, after day 2, I couldn't get out of bed. And so she just didn't have the cortisol to try to stimulate, try to get her blood sugars up. So she was just going flatlining as far as her blood sugars were extremely low all the time. And in fact, this is why, some people, when they're dealing with a pretty bad inflammatory trigger, you'll notice that their cortisol levels will go down quite a bit. And that's by design. It's not the body messing up. But this is why, fasting for them can be very, very difficult, if not impossible. And I don't recommend it for every single person, especially if you have really, really low cortisol, especially. So if you look at this individual, he's got a lot of dizziness, sinus infection, skin issues, very low hormones, and he's got that high of mold. And in fact, he said, my blood sugars are run actually really, really low. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because you got an inflammatory trigger. And your cortisol levels are going to be really, really low. And so you won't be able to mobilize blood sugar, anytime that you're fasting or you haven't eaten, or even during times of stress, as well. So this is why he was having a really, really bad day. So for this individual, should he fast? And the answer is no, not right now. Not to say that he should never, ever do it, but he needs to recover first and foremost before he starts stressing out his body in the form of fasting, especially. Okay. All right, how about this question? And guys, in just a second, we'll take some questions. Number 1, do I need to count my calories? And I get this question a lot. And you know who needs to count their calories? I'm going to show you here in just a second because people ask me, do I count my calories? And I'm like, never. I never do that. And in fact, I may get on a scale every like 4 months or so. In fact, I just took my body fat percentage a couple of weeks ago, but I'm not getting on a scale every single day. I just think, measuring my gravitational pull on the earth is not how I want to spend my time, especially. So do I need to count my calories? Now, generally speaking, probably not, but let me give you a little bit more detail. Okay. So, I actually found one of these in our house, and it's a Ghirardelli milk chocolate caramel square. And it wasn't because we actually bought them. Someone gave them as like a gift for Christmas. And I saw it and I opened it up and I thought, nobody had eaten it. But here's what was so interesting because I looked at this and this was what kind of like I got a little bit of the the impetus to start talking about this. But one square, which was about a 1 square inch chocolate square with a little bit of caramel in it, had 70 calories in that. Okay. just 70 calories in that little bite-sized square. And then I started thinking, I'm like, how much broccoli has 70 calories, and it's 2 cups. So 2 cups of broccoli has 70 calories. Now let me ask you a question. The broccoli, which one has more volume? It's the broccoli. Which one has more nutrients in it? It's the broccoli. Which one has more fiber? It's the broccoli. Which one's going to stretch your stomach more? It's the broccoli. Which one's going to help you feel fuller? And it's going to be the broccoli. The problem is not many people eat one square and then they're done. It turns into 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And um, this is why people, when they say, "Oh, I can't lose weight." Did you know that an overwhelming majority amount of the time, people underestimate truly how much they are eating? And a good way to underestimate how much you're eating is to eat this and not think that it doesn't matter. So snacking is where people actually get it way, way wrong. And snacking is actually where people underestimate truly how much they are eating. Now, this isn't a lot of food, but it is a lot of calories. It's very calorically dense. And the reason why is there's a lot of sugar, there's a lot of fat that's in it. And this right here is just a lot of complex carbohydrates that aren't going to be spiking your blood sugar, and a lot of fiber is going to be involved with it. So this is where people run into a lot of issues. So you say, I don't need to count my calories. You really don't need to count it if this is primarily what you're eating, with some meats and veggies, nuts and seeds, a little bit of no added sugar, maybe a little bit of starch, some fruit, things like that. Is that this is where people are really running into a lot of problems, is when they start snacking on this. And where people run into a lot of problems is the snacking at night, and they underestimate truly how much they're eating throughout the day. So this is why, generally speaking, you really don't need to be counting your calories, because it's very tough in order to get the required amount of calories that you need, or energy input, if this is what you're actually sticking to right here. Okay. Which leads me to this. What's the best way to eat? What's the best way to eat, Dr. Nate? Well, generally speaking, I would say this: eat meats and veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no added sugar. If you had no added sugar and you were eating this right here, this would be a good start for a lot of people. And the reason why is they wouldn't be overeating so much. Do I also think that you need to be looking at digestion, stomach acid, pancreatic enzyme activity, gallbladder function? Yes, all those. And then inflammatory response around the gastrointestinal barrier. All those things are going to matter. But if you actually taught a child to eat this way, and you didn't introduce food too early, then this is a great way for them to be able to start. And guys, my kids, they don't care about sugary drinks. They don't care about fruit juice. When you ask them what do you want to drink, they're like, water. It's like that's the only thing that they're really interested in. But they just don't have a desire for a lot of snacks or anything like that. So do you need to count your calories? Probably not, because watch this. I never see people gain a lot of weight when they're eating this way, especially. I remember I had a woman who came to me. She's like, I can't lose weight. And then she came down with the flu and a respiratory virus, and she couldn't eat for a month, and she ended up losing 15 pounds. And I'm like, well, I thought you told me you couldn't lose any kind of weight. And she's like, gosh, I was wrong. Well, one of the reasons why is she couldn't hardly eat anything for a whole entire month as she started to recover from that virus. And then she did, in fact, actually start losing weight. So that's why you need to change the way that you are eating. And you can't be so hyper focused on, I need to snack all the time. And start working on, when you put food in your body, it's like, is this something that's going to nourish me? Or is this something that is just adding to a lot of fat deposition, high blood sugar, insulin resistance, and things like that? So I can tell you, not say that this is something that you should do, but when people say, hey, how do you eat? In fact, I'm like, well, I've done a lot of testing. And so here's basically how I eat. Okay. I don't eat a lot during the day. But basically for breakfast and lunch, I have about 30 grams of bone broth protein. Somebody asked me this question. I have a chicken allergy. Can I have bone broth if it has chicken in it? I'm like, absolutely, because it's not chicken breast. It's not the muscle meat. It's coming from the bone and tendon constituents. So that's why it's a lot different than a muscle meat if it's coming from the actual bones. So 30 grams of bone broth protein for breakfast and lunch, and then dinner. So when I go home in a little bit, Dinner is when I focus on probably getting most of my food. And this is just me with my schedule and things like that. But try to get about 100 grams of protein at dinner, tons of veggies. I'll eat as much as I want, but no snacks. But I'm not sitting and trying to eat a bunch of snacks all the time because I just know that my body doesn't need them and they're not going to be good for me, even though they might give me a little bit of pleasure. In the long run, it's just not good. So, but the thing is, if you do that and if you're still hungry, then just go to bed. So I have had, things even like with fasting where I'm like, "Oh man, I am super hungry right now." And you know what I do? Rather than uh just just whine and complain and just think about it, I just go straight to bed and then I wake up in the morning and I'm not that hungry. So boredom can actually make or break you. And so if you are hungry, and you're just watching TV and you're hungry, like, oh man, I'm gonna eat a bunch of things that I don't necessarily need, my body doesn't need, even though I might want it, is just go to bed early. That's one of the best things that I can tell you. Okay. All right. So guys, let's answer a couple of questions that people have on there. And so if you got questions, now's a good time to actually ask those questions. I'll do my best in order to uh, answer that. So Dennis from YouTube, why is having blood sugar fluctuations dangerous? Okay. All right, Dennis. So one of the things that I would say is um, there's been a lot of hype, I would say, on continuous glucose monitors and things like that, which I don't think are necessarily needed, or I don't necessarily think that they're a good idea. But blood sugar fluctuations can be an indication that you might be having some levels of insulin resistance. And in fact, if you do like a fasting blood sugar and it's under 90, then you're having some problems being able to handle your blood sugar, especially. So it doesn't mean that if you eat food, your blood sugars aren't going to elevate, but I don't think that it's necessarily something that is dangerous, for you. Because I've seen people be walking around and have undiagnosed type 2, diabetes, and their blood sugars are 240 and 250. So this is, one of the things is why you want good blood sugar control. You don't need to eat necessarily a lot of carbs. You don't need to eat that many carbs, but this is why having a lot of muscle mass. This is why eating complex carbohydrates are going to be the best for you. Only just because in the forms of veggies, especially, only because they take longer for the body to be able to break down. Yes, there's a difference between a piece of bread and a piece of broccoli as far as what it's going to cause to your blood sugars and things like that. So thank you very much for that question. Georgia, it's always good to see you from snowy South Dakota. Thank you very much for watching. Okay. And Georgia also said, my panel showed I can't eat eggs, wheat, yeast, flaxseed, tomatoes, and nuts. Yes. And what does that mean? That just means that um, that I love when people say, oh, it just means that you've been exposed to it. Here's the thing is that your immune system reacts to full proteins. It doesn't react to the broken down proteins called amino acids, within that. So if someone has a lot of issues with eggs, wheat, yeast, flaxseed, tomatoes, and nuts, then they're probably have had a tough time being able to break that down. And that's why just avoiding the foods isn't necessarily going to cause all your problems going away. You really want to take a deep dive into, hey, what about digestion? Okay. So good stomach acid is going to be very important to help you be able to break down your proteins the way that you are supposed to. But if someone has a lot of different type of food allergies, that's when you would start getting into saying, hey, there's a leaky gut that's going on, or a lot of gastrointestinal hyperpermeability. And the function of the barrier in the gastrointestinal system probably isn't working very well. There's probably been a lot of inflammatory triggers that has done some damage to the gastrointestinal barrier, which is why a lot of things start to leak through as well. So, but you should make sure you do a good job of avoiding that, guys. I avoided chicken eggs for 3 years. It was just absolutely crushing me, as well. And then, I tested, and, by the fourth test that I got, it was like, okay, I did better. So I introduced eggs again, but I introduced them not by having, you know, 8 eggs every single day. I'd have them maybe once a week and have 3 to 4 eggs. And so I used to have tremendous like bloating every single time that I eat. I don't get that anymore. So I still avoid my food allergies. So no doubt about it. I'll test it every single year, but it's not like how they were or severe than they were 3 to 4 years ago. Okay. All right. So, Envision Studios, I remember you. How are you? Happy Monday from TNT in Chillicothe, Illinois. So, down by Peoria. We miss having you. I hope that you schedule an appointment very soon. I hope you're doing very, very well as well. Okay. All right. Georgia asked another question. I don't have a gallbladder. Could that be? Okay. All right. So, I've gone over what you need to do if you don't have a gallbladder, but it's not uncommon. And in fact, anybody who's had their gallbladder removed, one of the first things that I will do is yeah, you really should probably be getting a stool test and see how well you are breaking down certain foods, because you'll have a harder time breaking down foods that are higher in fat. Okay, so higher in fat. However, if you do have your gallbladder removed, then it's very common to see a lot of bacterial overgrowth, only because you've changed the way that your gallbladder actually releases bile, and that can change the whole entire microbiome, especially. This is why probably getting a stool test would be very, very important, just to see what's going on. But yes, taking some form of ox bile when you eat will actually just put a lot extra bile in there just to help you break down your fats a little bit better, and also be able to absorb some of your fat soluble vitamins, things like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. All those things you need a certain level of gallbladder or bile in order to be able to break those things down and to be able to shuttle those vitamins across the gastrointestinal barrier. Very, very important, because a lot of people who do have their gallbladder removed can become very deficient in certain type of fat soluble vitamins. One of them is actually vitamin D. This is why this is very, very important. And I always have the joke with people, they have their gallbladder out, and and so we start working on doing that. And they're like, how long do I need to be on the gallbladder for? I'm like, just until you regrow your gallbladder. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand. So that's just one of the things that people will need to take forever. Okay. So forever. You're not going to grow it back. You're not going to grow it back. And so you lost the storage tank to be able to release the right amount of bile anytime that you are eating, high amounts of fat. But it's not uncommon to see on your food allergy list a lot of foods that have a lot of fat in them, only because you're just not breaking them down the way that you are supposed to. Okay. All right. Allison from YouTube. How do I get my family to hop on the health train? All right. All right. This is tough, because it's very tough, as far as accountability and things like that. This isn't necessarily a health question as much as, hey, how do I change people's mindset? And you know how you change people's mindset? You really can't, not until they're ready. All right. But how you get them to get interested in health? One of the first things that I would say is for you, Allison, be a great example. People, that's why, it's like you don't talk about all the wonderful things that you are doing. Don't talk about the things you plan on doing. Someone said, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm like, great. I believe that you can do it. Just tell me about it when you've already done it. So, how do you get them on the health train? Be a great example. Now, I will tell you this, as full disclosure, is that people aren't going to listen to you as much as if they are part of your family. Okay. Your family and your friends probably won't listen to you that much. Right. And this is kind of personal experience. Mom and dad, I love you so much. But, they changed your diaper. And so they're never going to see you in the same light that other people are going to see you. So the only thing that I could tell you is, how do you get your family involved? Well, I would actually say this is, be a tremendous example and let them see your life changed. Let them see your life changed and start to get them interested. So that's why I'll never talk about anything, to a patient unless they first ask. So I'm not going to say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, unless they're asking first. And that's why getting them curious can have a tremendous benefit, but the only way to get them curious is to be a tremendous example and to see some of the things that you've been doing, how your life, in fact, has changed. And then that will get them curious, especially when they become sick. You just have to be patient. That's one of the most important things, is that you just have to be patient. All right, guys. Any other questions? I know that we answered a question about blood sugars. We answered a question about the carnivore diet, answered questions about first steps with mold. Also a little bit about the gallbladder and things like that, how to get your family, on board, be a great example. All right, guys, any other questions? So just so you know, guys, coming up Tuesday, this is February 25th. If you're from the Chicagoland area, you want to work with us directly, please make sure that you go and you register for the inflammation event that's going to be on Tuesday, February 25th at 6:00 p.m. This is an in-person event, so make sure that you get registered for that. The best way to get registered for that right away is you don't even need to call our office. Just go to our Linktree profile. You will see that in the comments, the host chat. You'll see that in the comments. You also see it on all of our socials. And if you click on that Linktree, you'll be able to register for the inflammation events, the first thing to actually show up. In addition to that, you'll also see the free resource for the workout book. And you can also order your t-shirt in order to support our mission to help spread the Wellness Way approach to as many people as possible. Also, this helps just to support our live broadcast that we do every single week as well. So I would feel very, very thankful if you got registered for the inflammation talk and you supported our work, especially. Okay. So you can get that free workout ebook. And also the workout ebook, there's not a lot of equipment that you need, but if you do need any equipment, you can order this on Amazon and have it at your house within 2 to 3 days. And everybody does, I hope, know how to use Amazon. Okay. So home workouts, and you'll see tons of awesome things that you can do too. And you also see that some of them are linked directly to Amazon. So you can actually get things like an ab mat, a jump rope, a kettlebell. I think there's some of the basic things that you need in order to be able to do all of those workouts. Okay. All right, guys. Question and answer. Thank you guys so much for your questions. I sincerely appreciate it. And by the way, if you do have a question on the replay of this video, I'm not going to guarantee that I can go back and answer that question, because I'm just taking questions live as they come in during the live broadcast. So guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you follow our page. I always appreciate that. Make sure you get registered for the inflammation talk that's coming up. And I'll be doing a live video next Monday, Lord willing. I know I have a really, really busy weekend with a lot of sporting events and things like that. So if I come back and I do a live question and answer, you'll know I just didn't have enough time to be able to prepare a new live topic. But if you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments as well. So guys, thank you very much for watching this broadcast. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you. Please make sure that you share this video as well. And we will see you guys next week. Be well. And as I always say, just remember who you are.